In this lesson, we're going to cover vulnerability response and remediation options. Vulnerability response and remediation refers to the strategies and actions taken to identify, assess, and address vulnerabilities in a system or network by aiming to mitigate risks associated with those known vulnerabilities so that you can strengthen your organization's security posture. When a vulnerability is identified within an organization, it's imperative to respond effectively and efficiently to mitigate or completely neutralize that threat. The process of vulnerability response and remediation is going to encompass a range of options, including patching, insurance, network segmentation, implementing compensating controls, and granting exceptions and exemptions. Now let's take a look at each of these options and how they contribute to an organization's overall cybersecurity strategy. Now our first option for response and remediation is the use of patching. Patching refers to the process of applying updates to software, systems, or applications in order to fix security vulnerabilities or to improve performance. Patches are typically released by software vendors to fix known vulnerabilities that could be exploited by a threat actor. For example, if a software company has identified a vulnerability in its word processing software application that would allow a threat actor to gain unauthorized access to your sensitive data, that company should quickly develop and release a security patch or hotfix to mitigate this known vulnerability. Now that the patch is released, it's going to be up to our end users to update their software to the latest version that includes this new security patch so that vulnerability on their system can be mitigated and that the threat actor can no longer exploit their system. The second option we have for response and remediation is to purchase an insurance policy. Now, purchasing a cybersecurity risk insurance policy is going to be a risk management strategy where an organization is going to procure an insurance policy that is designed to mitigate any financial losses that could result from a cyber incident like a data breach, network outage, or business interruption. For example, if you're working for a small e-commerce company, you might opt to purchase a cybersecurity insurance policy so that if the company does suffer from a data breach, the insurance policy will cover the costs for mitigation, remediation, and recovery that are associated with that incident. And this includes things like legal fees, new servers, new software, consultants, public relation efforts to rebuild your company's image, and all the costs associated with notifying your customers that were affected by that incident. Our third option for response and remediation is known as segmentation. Network segmentation involves dividing a computer network into smaller parts or segments to improve performance and security by isolating different parts of the network from each other. This way, if one segment becomes compromised, the threat will not be allowed to easily propagate itself into other parts of your organization's network as well. For example, a hospital might implement network segmentation to separate patient data from other non-critical systems. This way, if a malware infection occurs in one of the non-critical systems, the segmented network that's hosting that sensitive patient data will be kept safe from the malware that already infected our non-critical systems in that other network segment. Our fourth option for response and remediation is known as compensating controls. Compensating controls are alternative security measures that can be implemented when a standard security control cannot feasibly or effectively be implemented on a given system. These compensating controls are tailored to provide equivalent levels of protection when you're mitigating your vulnerabilities. For example, let's say that your organization's leadership decided that we're all going to use multi-factor authentication on all of our systems because it's considered the best practice for securing your user accounts. The problem with this is that we can't implement MFA on all of our servers because some of them are running older, legacy versions of the server software. Now, until those servers can be replaced or upgraded to more modern versions of the server software, our company is going to have to use a series of compensating controls such as rigorous password policies, account lockouts after failed login attempts, and regular security awareness training for our employees to mitigate the fact that multi-factor authentication simply cannot be installed on those legacy servers at this time. Now, our fifth option for response and remediation is to create an exception or an exemption. An exception in the world of vulnerability response refers to a situation where a certain security control or policy is going to be temporarily relaxed or bypassed because your operational business needs it to be. Now, when you do this, you have to understand and accept the associated risk of bypassing those controls, but when you do, this creates an exception. Now, for example, if an organization has a policy that requires all of your systems to be updated regularly, but you have a critical server running a legacy application that simply cannot be updated without breaking that application, well, in this case, you need to use an exception. And that exception can be made so that this server is being acknowledged for the risk of not being updated, and the rationale and timeframe for that exception will also be documented, like the scope of the exception and the date by which the exception will expire, and that server has to be replaced or upgraded to a more secure version, or be completely removed from the network for non-compliance. Now, an exemption, on the other hand, is an instance where a security control or policy is permanently going to be waived for a specific reason, such as when you're trying to use a legacy system that simply cannot use a modern security measure as one of its controls. For example, if you're working for a large university's research department and they have an older computer system that's necessary for processing historical data and it can't run the updated security software that you want to install, your university's chief information security officer might decide to grant a permanent exemption for that system so it doesn't have to be updated anymore in the future, because this system will be physically and logically isolated from the rest of the university's network, and this mitigates the potential risk associated with making this exemption. And because the system is so expensive, it's going to take us years to replace because we can't afford to buy a new supercomputer, for example, and so we're going to have to use an exception instead of completely avoiding this risk by updating that server. So remember, vulnerability response and remediation refers to the strategies and actions that are taken to identify, assess, and address vulnerabilities in a system or network by aiming to mitigate risks associated with those known vulnerabilities so that you can strengthen your organization's security posture. Whether it's quickly applying patches, investing in an insurance policy, utilizing network segmentation, implementing compensating controls, or granting exceptions and exemptions, each type will offer us a different way to enhance the organization's cybersecurity posture. By understanding and effectively leveraging these options, your organization can fortify its defenses and navigate the complex landscape of cybersecurity threats with more confidence and more resilience.